Hello, welcome to another edition of Between the Pages with James Lott Jr. I'm James Lott Jr. Now, many of you know I do the soaps. I do Bold and the Beautiful, Young and the Restless, General Hospital, Some Days of Our Lives. I interview the stars. Today I had interviews out with Wally Kurth, who's doing both General Hospital and Days of Our Lives. He's doing both, playing both characters. And I just interviewed Kathleen Gotti, who does General Hospital. I'm in talks with other people who do other shows, but this is a person that I have been wanting to meet since the books came out back in the 90s. We're talking 1996, 1997. So our opera Encyclopedia. So our book of lists. He has other books too, but these are the two that for me, as a soap opera fan, have had these the original ones. I've held on to them this whole time. All my moves, all the cities I lived in, held on to them. And I reached out to him, and he actually said, James, I will do your show. So I want to introduce to you the writer of these books, Gerard Waggett. How are you?
I'm doing well, and please call me Gerry.
Yes. I'll call you Gerry.
How are you doing, James? It's always nice to meet somebody who liked my books and actually bought the books, you know?
Yes, I bought them, Gerry. I bought them. So with my money. And I mean, they're a little worn and everything. They're a little worn. They're a little colored and everything. Because these things. Okay, well, first of all, before we begin to all that, first of all, thank you for being on the show, of course. But how are you doing during this whole crazy time?
Actually, I'm doing extremely well here because, I'm lucky. I live alone. I have a 6-room apartment all to myself. So, I'm not worried about being crowded in. I have a great neighborhood here where I can walk down to a butcher shop and a fish market. I get like peapod delivery. Well, getting deliveries is difficult. You have to sign. I have to get up in the middle of the night to sign up to get a time slot. But
I know. I know.
Yeah. But I'm getting food, and I have these great corner stores in my neighborhood that remain open that I patronize. So I'm very lucky in that. Yeah, when I think about some of the people who are cramped in these 2 or 3 room apartments with 5 kids and stuff, I'm like, no. But I have 6 rooms all to myself, so I'm very happy and I'm very comfortable.
Good.
And I have a backyard and 2 porches.
I'm very fortunate. I have a backyard, front yard, porches. I have a big house. I know I'm very fortunate that I'm not crowded in either. I made my house very comfortable. So I'm actually, before the Rona came, I made it very comfortable for myself. So I think it's
yeah. I said with the number of movies and books I've stocked up on, I feel like I'm almost Burgess Meredith in that Twilight Zone episode.
Time my God! Yes.
Yeah. So
don't bring up that episode because I wear glasses. I can't wear them when I'm on the computer, but I wear glasses, and that ending is a nightmare to me. It's a nightmare. I'm like, he finally gets all the books organized, and they're all. And he's like, the rest of it gonna be finally left alone. And he breaks his glasses. I'm like, when he goes, no, I go no with him. I'm like, that's crazy. It's like my nightmare. My nightmare.
You see, actually, I'm the exact opposite. I'm myopic, so I don't need glasses to read. I need them for distance. And this is a funny story. Do you know actually where I realized that I needed my glasses for distance was when I was literally standing on the stage on Jeopardy.
Oh, okay.
And I could not read the questions on the board.
Oh, no.
I had to go solely by listening to Alex Trebek, and thank God he has beautiful diction. But that's what I said, oh my God, this is what my eyes are like. And I'm like, what do I do? And I said, okay. And I realized, and I calmed myself down by remembering that there was a contestant on the Jeopardy a couple months before I was on by the name of Eddie Timanis, who was legally blind. And he was a champion. I said, okay, if Eddie Timanis could do it not being able to see the board, I could do it squinting and listen to Alex. But that's how I realized that I needed glasses.
That's so funny. For me, I just first of all, you were on Jeopardy. So when were you on Jeopardy? I'm like, before I was doing any of that, when were you on Jeopardy? 2003.
It was actually around this same time of year, 2003. Yeah.
So and you actually
I filmed it in January, and then it aired right around Easter weekend, 2003.
So you actually have kind of like a small personal, connection to Alex and what, because he's going through what he's going through right now. You actually got to.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, he was a great guy. It's a funny story too. Is that another funny Jeopardy related to Brian Dennehy, who just passed away this week. I met him about a month or two after my Jeopardy episode aired, and he had done Celebrity Jeopardy.
Okay.
So I walked up to him. He was getting an award at the Elliott Norton Award from the Boston theater community, and I happened to be a guest there that night. And I walked up. I said, "Hey, we have something in common. We were both on Jeopardy. How'd you like the experience?" And as it turned out, he hated it. Okay.
Oh.
And he told me, "Oh my God, it's horrible. It takes so long to blink it, and they make the question so easy, and you look stupid that you can't blink it." And then he looked at me and goes, "How did you do?" And I said, "My 1-2 games." He goes, "Well, very good for you." And then, ironically, a couple months later, probably not a couple months, about a year or two later, his daughter was on the show. His daughter, who soap fans may remember, was, I think, one of the original, as an adult actress, Blake on Guiding Light.
Yes, Guiding Light, Elizabeth Dennehy. Yes, I remember her.
Right,
yeah.
and she did Jeopardy, and she mentioned that her father, Brian Dennehy, and Alex Trebek said, "Well, how was his experience?" And she was like, "Oh, he loved it." And I'm thinking at home, no, he didn't.
No, he didn't. He didn't love it. Mm-mm.
No, it's like, but what's she going to say to Alex during the course of the show? Yeah. And actually, I was surprised because she was an actress. She'd done Jeopardy, before Jeopardy, and she'd done Guiding Light. She'd also been an episode of Seinfeld I saw.
Okay.
Yeah.
But she didn't do much like in the larger scheme after that, did she? Not really.
No, she never hit the heights that say, as I always feel like I have to say now, non-corona cough.
That's right. I know how this is.
It's Sherry Stringfield came along and replaced her, and of course went on to huge fame with ER and NYPD Blue, and then Liz Kiefer came in and just kind of like took the role to the end of the show.
Yeah. So that's what I want to get into. These books, back when you did these books, there was like 10,000 soaps on the air. So it's amazing. Right. I think it was like 13 or so. And then before that, there was like 26 at one point. I mean, there was a lot of, so we've got 4. People, if you guys are newer soap people, you have no idea. Every channel had a block of soaps. Was that glorious? Was this just a glorious time, Gerry?
It was. I can tell you, what was additional to that was, I also loved the time when there was soap operas, and it was mixed in with really good game shows, like $20,000 Pyramid. Well, actually, originally $10,000 Pyramid, $20,000 Pyramid, Password, Match Game, and we had this nice mix before those sort of before the talk show became the norm, and even like I think the talk shows back then. When you had like Phil Donahue, and they were talking about real things that mattered, and before it all just, I hate to say before it all became like paternity tests, I really liked the afternoon lineup because it was like, you had this nice mix. You had soap operas, you had really intelligent game shows, you had, talk shows where people actually talked. They didn't just like scream and hit each other with chairs. And it was just like daytime TV, I thought used to be like really, really good back then and provocative and interesting, especially in the 70s. They're bringing together so many topics that people just needed to talk about. And I thought it was, and even like the celebrity talk shows of the time, like say Merv Griffin, Dinah Shore, Mike Douglas. What I loved about them is they had the guests come out, and then they had the other guests come out so they could actually interact. Now it's like, hi, I come out, I plug my product for 5 or 10 minutes, then I'm gone. We're on to the next person, basically doing a pseudo commercial for the next movie they're in.
True, very true. What's funny for me is that, I look at, I've interviewed at this point, I've been in business for like 13 years. So I've interviewed hundreds of soap actors at this point. And I remember when I was talking to when I would talk to the I won't say older, but longer soap actors, I am taken back because I've been watching soap since the late 70s. And I may look young, but I've been around for a while. And I remember when I interviewed Susan C. Fortes and Bill Hayes the first time, I loved them. I mean, they're just one of the greatest couples on earth, Doug and Julie. I told them, I said, I remember when you were on the cover of Time magazine. That was a big deal. That a soap opera, when I showed them the cover, they're like, yes, they remember the cover. They told us a whole story about that. And then I said, you were in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Remember that? The scene where they show Days of Our Lives in the background. Doug and Julie are in this iconic, huge movie. And he gave us some back scenes about that too. And it's like, that's when the soaps kind of they had their time. Not just now, it's like they don't get, I mean, the Talk does a few every once in a while, it was an anniversary, but they don't showcase any of the soap actors anymore on regular press.
And they don't. I gotta tell you, my first, introduction to Bill and Susan Seaforth Hayes was actually on Hollywood Squares, and actually not just on Hollywood Squares, but when Hollywood Squares used to do a show aimed with kids called Storybook Squares, and they played Adam and Eve. So that's how far back I go.
Wow, funny! I didn't even know that. Like,
I knew who they were. And I knew that they were a big soap opera couple before I was even like watching the soap operas. Well, actually, in the '60s, of course, I watched Dark Shadows, and then I watched a little bit of One Life to Live during a snowstorm one year. But actually, I knew certain soap actors because of the game shows they appeared on. And Bill and Susan Seaforth Hayes, used to be a very popular couple in Hollywood Squares. I think maybe they liked the idea of two people sharing one square.
Yeah, it's just funny because everybody knew who Susan Lucci was. Everybody, there's certain people that, like, we think back in the day, just from the 70s and 80s, there were some that just, even if you knew who J.R. Ewing was at night. Like, there's some people you knew who they were, whether you watched the soap. Erica Kane's a name, of course. Everybody knows Erica Kane, whether you watched All My Children or not. You kind of just know. And of course, Susan Lucci losing all those Emmys, of course, helped her status until she won. It helped her status become popular. It's like, I'm the Susan Lucci of this because I lost 10 times. I mean, they're still said today. It's funny how certain actors and characters did elevate past their soap back then. This is
I mean, I was actually literally watching General Hospital the very first day that Tony Geary debuted as Luke.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's how far back I go watching the soaps. And he showed up to give Bobby advice on stealing Scotty away from Laura.
Laura, yes.
Oh. Yeah. And I always said that there was one of the things that got me, well, two things, interestingly, one of the things that got me into watching General Hospital was a story about a pandemic, about, an epidemic that was called Lassa fever that was sweeping through Port Charles.
Yes.
And I watched because, it was very exciting in the way it was filmed, and you saw this one character racing across rooftops, the police chasing him. So it was very much like the sort of nighttime drama you'd see, like Starsky and Hutch, Charlie's Angels, that type of drama. But I also got really drawn in when you had the people dealing with this illness. And, I kept thinking, when are they going to figure out that Jeremy is the carrier? This little boy who kissed his grandmother right before he died. And it was fascinating to me. And I really liked the whole format of watching it. And I got drawn in by the characters. I also got drawn in because, of course, like many people, you always seem to inherit your soap watching from friends. And I remember that, I used to, hang out with this, friends after school. And one of them was this young woman named Jane, who she and her family were big General Hospital fans. And I go over there one afternoon, and I forgot the golden rule. You're not allowed to go there until General Hospital's over. So I knock on the door, and she rips open the door, and she goes, "Bobby's not pregnant." And I look over, and her brother Bobby is lying on the living room floor. And I'm like, "Was there any question?"
Right.
And she goes, "Not him, her." And then they pointed to Jacqueline Zeman on TV.
That's so.
And and I guess that was a big moment in General Hospital history, was that Bobby wasn't really pregnant by Scotty.
Yeah, I remember that. That's funny. I know for me, I'm trying to think. Now you said, I'm trying to think. My mother watched Young and the Restless, but she also watched all the ABC soaps since I was a kid. I remember I was a kid. And my brother was born the year Young and the Restless was born. It was born itself. And so I remember watching that. For me, I had older siblings, and a couple of my sisters would watch, Another World, Search for Tomorrow. They're very NBC. Then I had a couple of that. One sister was CBS. She was As the World Turns, Guiding Lights. She was that. But then for us as kids, we got into ABC basically. That was the one we started with. The ABC it was that whole line. It was general. It was all the way from Ryan's Hope, to All My Children Would Like to Live, Gerard J. Edge of Night. And I actually interviewed Lori Loughlin years later, who played on Guiding Light back in the day, and Jody Travis. She was like, "You remember that's a girl?" It was something that came on late in Los Angeles. It was on later in the afternoon. and my grandmother watched it. She's like, that's what it was. So I remember that. And then you have on the cover of this one, my girl, Kristian Alfonso, plays Hope Williams Brady. I fell in love with her on her first episode in 1983, and that's how I started watching Days of Our Lives. And a little side note to you, Jay, I don't know what, we're friends on Facebook, I don't know what you see in my profile picture with me and Kristian. After 36 years, I finally met her and got to interview her last year. And it was the moment of my life. I mean, I literally wept and fell into her arms, and it was like it was the best moment for me. So
it's funny because now she grew up she grew up like in the South Shore from Boston in Brockton.
Yes, she did.
But I guess she got married in a Boston church, and I know that one of the police officers who was assigned to traffic duty to help with that was a friend of mine. She goes, oh, you're at the soaps. I actually like last weekend wound up doing traffic for Hope's wedding. So when Kristian Alfonso got married, my friend, the police officer, wound up doing the traffic, coordinating the traffic.
Ah, that's so funny. I know. Yeah, she's from Boston. Well, she's a Boston girl. But
yeah, actually, there are a few of them around here. Like who else I meet was Scott DeFreitas, who's married to
Mara West.
Mara West, yeah. I met him years ago, and because he's from Newton, and so we were talking about that, and it was a fun conversation, just sort of talking about the Boston connection. And of course, Mara West, I'm not sure where she grew up, but I believe she went to BU.
Okay.
So yeah, and it's and so there's all a lot of these soap opera people do have these great Boston connections.
Yeah, it's funny to me because now I'm in Hollywood. I'm in this whole thing. I get to meet them and see them, and for me it's the longer one. The ones I finally met Elizabeth Hubbard. Like, she's the doctor. She's As the World Turns. She was Lucinda. I got to meet her at Martha Byrne. I got to meet her, and like those are the ones that I go goo goo gaga over most of the time. I like all actors, but like those are the ones I grew up with you guys. I know what's going on, and today, because the soaps are running out at the moment because of the virus. I don't know if you know this, we're all going back to the classic episodes now. Is that funny?
Yeah, tomorrow, I think they said tomorrow is going to be our last Young and the Restless episode that's new.
And Bold and Beautiful.
Yeah.
That too.
And Bold and Beautiful too. Okay, yeah, it makes sense that they're both in there. And the same, And, I will tell you, I have Elizabeth Hubbard she called me up on the phone one time and chewed me out.
Oh, and why was that, sir?
Okay, I was doing my first book, the Soap Opera Book of Lists, okay?
Right here, guys.
And thank you. I really wanted an interview with her very, very badly, okay? Because I wanted to get her favorite storylines from not only the Doctors, but As the World Turns. And so I was trying to go through the press agent for As the World Turns, okay? And they said, okay, well, Elizabeth Hubbard doesn't use a press. Any requests for her have to go through her lawyer. I said, okay. So I put a couple calls into him to see about this. And she called me up and she said, would you please stop calling my lawyer? Every time you call him, it costs me money. And I'm like, okay, well, since I have you on the phone right now, would you like to tell me like some of your favorite storylines on As the World Turns and As the World Turns and the Doctors? And she goes, I've never had a storyline on As the World Turns. Like, okay, I think it happened. I couldn't press it, and she was like just so mad at me because I cost her money with the talking to her lawyer. What I was trying to do was set up an interview with her.
Yes, that's so funny. Oh my God, I love it. I mean,
yeah,
that leads into this is that these books are for the time period very comprehensive, right? It's like, I wish we could do this now. I mean, it's like there's so many people like, who's related to whom and how that person related to family trees and people. I would love these books. I would love to have, but I know it's a lot of work. So I was going to ask you, how did you do all this work? How long did it take you to do this Encyclopedia book? How long did it take you to do this book?
About 8 months. Wow. Luckily, I had like a lot of resources. I also had about, at that point, 10 to 15 years worth of Soap Opera Digest built up. My father always kept saying, when are you going to throw these out? Are you ever going to read them again? And I held my gun, I held it fast. I said, I'm not throwing them out. And sure enough, they came in handy, not just with the Soap Opera Book of Lists and the Soap Opera Encyclopedia, but everything. all the other trivia books I did. And I actually wound up on one of my moves finally throwing them out because I realized that unfortunately the books weren't selling anymore because the internet came in and people could just get all this information on the internet. But I went back and I basically went through 20 years of soap opera weeklies and soap opera digests that I had to compile all the information. I will say a couple of things I got a little bit wrong, but sometimes I got things wrong because somebody reported it wrong. Okay. And, you know, it's, and I remember, like, I do know that Michael Logan took me to task for it. And, you know, he's pointed out, like, I miscredited Richard Cullerton with creating a storyline that he hadn't done. And then I also had referred to Alexis as Alexa, which I think Alexa Davis does still work better as a name than Alexis Davis. But anyways, those type of, and I also know some of the fans when I spelled Vicky's name with a C and they got upset with that. So there were small mistakes like that I did make. But also part of the problem was when I was putting the book together, my editors kept quitting. So I didn't have a consistent editorial board, you know, to help me keep me consistent. So it was unfortunate, but there were a few mistakes that slipped in there. But how I put the books together, yeah, I also have this bizarre type of memory where I just remember a lot of trivia. Okay,
like me, like me, we just do.
Yeah, I mean, and people, and I retain things, and people, like, I'll meet somebody for the second time and like remember things they told me the first time we've ever met, and they like act like, have you been stalking me? I'm like, no, you told me this the last time we met.
Right. I just remember.
They totally forgot it. I remembered it. And I do that with soap opera characters too. And not so much nowadays because I've been a little bit more removed from the that world. But I used to be able to keep track of all the actors' names and all the characters they played and pretty much how long they've been on the shows. And so when I put together, you know, the book, I'd say the first one, and I gotta say, of all the soap opera books I've written, the very first one, the Soap Opera Book of Lists, was my absolute favorite. I've always been a huge fan of lists. I used to listen to Casey Kasem every Saturday and or Sunday to get, you know, the top 40 of the week. Family Feud was my favorite game show. And one of my favorite books I ever bought was the Book of Lists when I was growing up.
Yeah, look at this.
And then you start putting together a list, and then you realize, wow, there are a number of these things that actually fit on the list. Like when I started to think, okay, well, I can think of a couple of shows like Guiding Light, and I'm trying to think of another one at the time that changed their names.
Oh. Yeah.
And then you realize you go back and you say, a bunch of them changed their name. Or you realize that, oddly enough, 6 soap operas now, I could only name the doctors, and well, later on it would be Passions, ended on New Year's Eve or New Year's Eve afternoon. But yeah, you find them and you say, okay, these are really interesting. Or other odd ones where people wound up, actors would play look-alike cousins, like Tony Geary and
we're half-sister cousins.
Yeah, you know, and so, and that also leads into the weird, like, thing I had of one of my favorite odd recasting stories, where they decided to take Sabrina and Franny, who were, the whole basis of their storyline was that they looked identical, and then they recast them with different actresses.
Right. Makes no sense.
And odds, and the thing is, there's such an abundance of these oddities in soap operas that you had to, you know, I said, it just made fun to compile all of them.
And I laugh because years later, cut to years later, like Buzz, you know, they do, and Mojo, they do lists. That's what people like. They still like lists to this day. So you were kind of ahead of your time. Nowadays, you go online, the top 10 this, the 5 biggest moments, the 6 biggest. Whenever I do like a 7 this or 8 that list, people eat it alive. They eat it with a spoon. They love lists.
Yeah, well, I think it's partly it's because, you know, when you have something like there's a list, there's an expectation of, is my favorite going to be on the list? It's contained, and also it's, as I said, it gives a sense of order to a lot of chaotic elements to life.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know myself. Everybody likes lists. Give me. We have the. How many amendments are there? How many commandments? How many? Give me a list of like the top 10 songs of the week. All that stuff, people gravitate towards, and they like the whole idea of counting down to what's going to, and it builds the suspense. What's going to be the number one? A lot of times I've actually heard like people will do lists of the most important actors on a show or the most important storylines, and you're always like, okay, let me see what they are. Or Entertainment also Weekly loves their lists of like the most important films of the 70s. Or the best TV shows of all time, and you're like, okay, let me see where my favorite ranks in that list. So there's a level of suspense to it. There's a level of this is interesting,
Yes. It's funny. I just turned to the page because I was telling this story the other day on another show I was doing. I'm friends with Cassie DePaiva in real life, so I've interviewed her many times. We're friends. But I remember we always joked, and the show even winked at it years later, about how she was originally Amerasian, and
right.
they just got rid of her and made her white. And it was so funny. I remember it was I think it was a dream sequence or something with all of what's his name, Erica's wives, and they actually
no, it was one of his funerals. It was one of his funerals.
Yeah, that's right. And they were all going. And when she thought back, and it was an Asian. It was like, oh, that's not me. Like it was like that's not me, because she wasn't married. Because her character was married to Asia, but not her, the actress on the show. It was the other guy, Mia Korf. So I thought it was so funny when they winked at that, kind of like, oh yeah, like just like okay.
I think when she came back from the memory, she pulled out her compact to just check the mirror.
Yeah, exactly.
A little inside joke.
Yeah, inside joke. I love that.
And by the way, I got to tell you one thing, because I met Cassie DePaiva once in New York, and of every actress I've ever met from the soaps, etc., she has the single most amazing pair of eyes. You don't get it completely on TV when you see her, but when you meet her in person, she is one of the few people where like, oh my God, people's eyes really do sparkle, and that's her. And plus, I have all of her CDs. She's got an amazing voice.
Well, I said she's amazing. Period. I think she's beautiful, just beautiful. Her and James they're great together, and just.
And I mean, and also she's she's like about 5'9", 5'10".
She's tall.
Yeah, I was disappointed when I actually went down to New York. I was supposed to. I did the One Life to Live, one of the last big fan club meetings that they had, and she was supposed to be there. And I think actually even across the table for me selling CDs. I was really psyched, but she and Marcy Breen and Bobby Eakes were doing a show in New York that night, so they had to do rehearsals, so she didn't show up, and I was like, oh, darn, because I was really looking forward to meeting her again.
Yeah, she's the bomb. But you also
let me ask you, do you think that she was completely, not completely, but her potential was not anywhere tapped into on Days?
No, I agree. Okay, so that's when I finally met her, was when I was doing the Days of Lives after show at AfterBuzz TV Edition Days, and she came on, and we struck a friendship from there. But yes, I felt like there was one. Okay, she's had like maybe 3 scenes on the show over the years that I thought was like, yes, this is what she can do, and I can name them. One is when they killed her daughter off.
Yes,
and those scenes were just like, I was like, girl, did you have like no makeup? Like you look like you're grieving for your daughter. And then she had a scene that was a couple of years later when she confronted the killer. He was out on, Ben was out, and
she beat the bleep out of him.
Yes, though I was like,
she could do it. That's the thing about her. She could do it.
Right. So Cassie is somebody that I feel, even on General Hospital, that whole Prospect Park thing that went down a couple of years ago. I thought, having Blair come on to General Hospital when she did for a few episodes, I thought there's a whole, it all fell apart. I feel like she's just gotten the short end of the stick many times, but I thought Days, they tried like on some level, but they didn't fully use her potential. They're like, this is a person who can do drama, comedy, sometimes at the same time, who has chemistry with a lot of people. Like her and Justin on Days had chemistry. There's all this stuff. I agree with you. They didn't use her to the best.
Well, I thought it was really weird because they bring on Eve, who was a singer, and
Yeah.
Cassie's baby has a beautiful voice.
Yeah.
And her whole storyline is she has some nodules on her throat, so she can't sing, and she basically only got like one singing thing the whole time. And I'm like, this is completely wasted. Also, where I knew that, I love Erica Slezak to death, okay?
Yes.
But I do have to say that one year with the live acting show where Cassie DePaiva could cry live on TV, I was so disappointed that she did not win that year, and that, you know, and not saying that Erica Slezak never did, didn't deserve it for every year, but you say, oh God, I wish I'd given it to her. I will say, I loved when she popped up on General Hospital, but I think unfortunately, shows have certain niches, and the whole Blair niche was already filled by Laura Wright's Carly. Yeah, who I also think, I will tell you, she is one actress I did a complete 180 on. I thought she was good enough on Loving, and I didn't love her first on Guiding Light when she was on there. I started to like her a little bit better. I was not thrilled when I found out that she was hired to take over the role of Carly, which I thought was one of the best roles on daytime. And I got to tell you, within 5 minutes of her debut on General Hospital, she won me over, and I think she's amazing. And I said, basically, it's a great example of some people are just waiting for the right role.
So I love that. I talk soaps all day long. I love this. So for me, just briefly go back to Cassie. I think because we're so hurt by the fact they got rid of all my children and wanted to live, I know my feelings were kind of like, I want to see more of them play in the GH universe. But, you know, I work in Hollywood, production. They already have a large cast. There's already stuff going on, so they couldn't really integrate. Because seeing her and Taya together, and the possibility of bringing on Ted King back on, it was all this stuff. He had played Alcazar in one show, and I was like, I admit I got caught up in all of that. So I think you're right. Like, some of those roles were already filled. They're already comparable to roles on General Hospital. So there have been too many of them running around on some level. But I know I was caught up in the whole nostalgia of like, it'll be nice to see Blair and them fight each other. But you're right. It would have been too much. Going to Laura Wright. Okay, so for me, Loving's fine. Loving was my favorite show. It was okay. I watched it. It was okay. And when I went to the city, I thought it was okay. They tried. I love Guiding Light. That was one of my favorite shows. And I just interviewed Crystal Chappelle yesterday, which was like a dream come true for me. I love Crystal Chappelle. And, you know, she's daytime royalty from all, Days and Venice the series and all that stuff. I liked Nicole Forster's portrayal of Cassie. I actually liked when she took over for Laura Wright. I actually liked her portrayal. When they killed Tammy, I was like, to me, those scenes, there was a scene I thought she should have won the Emmy that year. I thought when she confronts Alan, I'm like that. It was just like, I mean, Tom Pelphrey, of course, got all the rewards he should have gotten. He's just an amazing actor. I thought in that same token, she was really good. Like I thought, okay, Nicole Forster, you're actually doing a great job at this role for losing your daughter. I thought she was robbed a little bit. Laura Wright, because I was such a huge Sarah Joy Brown fan, Tamara Braun fan, and they were very different Carlys, but I loved them both. I was open to a new Carly. I was like, okay, I get that Jennifer, whatever, she didn't do anything. So I was like, okay, I'm open to a new Carly. And Laura Wright, I like her. There are times it bugs, but she's fine. She's good in the role. She's made the role her own. At this point, she's been longer than anybody else. So I mean, she's good. She's good.
Oh, interesting trivia. Do you know that when Laura Wright's character was introduced on Guiding Light, who was supposed to play her?
Who?
Kim Zimmer in a dual role.
Oh, how funny is that?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
That's another thing that I love finding out is like people who were supposed to have played other roles. That's actually in my original soap opera book list. I love going back and finding out, especially you don't always hear this on daytime, who was the person people wanted. And just like you find out that Jane Elliott was actually supposed to be Stephanie Forrester, and got a call pretty much on Christmas Eve saying, nope, we're not using you.
Yeah.
And also, who was supposed to be Stephanie Forrester was Susan Seaforth Hayes.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
because she had a role on Young and the Restless, and Young and the Restless. Right. A lot of times they use some of the same actors, right? They use them.
Once you work for Bill Bell, you're always in the Rolodex.
Yeah.
I mean, this is amazing when you will suddenly see on Young and the Restless where somebody who's been on the show 20 years ago is back and is like, and hasn't worked in that all that time, and suddenly they're back and like, wow, I mean, Bill Bell never used to forget anybody. And
he brought back Sheila. He brought back Sheila for a minute, and I was like, Kimberly Brown. I met Kimberly. Kimberly was great too. But I was like, he brought back Sheila. Wow, like that could I never see that coming. You're right about that.
Unfortunately, it was a great moment at the end of the show when she turned around and, oh my God, Sheila, and they did an awesome job keeping that under wraps.
Yes, but
it never amounted to anything.
Well, she was running for office at the same time, so it's kind of like, well, couldn't they have figured that out before? Couldn't they have either waited for her to finish that run? I felt the same thing. I talked to her about it. I go, girl, we loved you, but they're really fun. I mean, yeah, you and Quinn had a little moment here and there. I was like, she's crazy. That's kind of like, okay, that works, but it fizzled. Totally fizzled.
Yeah, and that actually always drives me crazy is when they bring on somebody with a lot of fanfare and makes a great moment, but it doesn't lead to anything.
That's how I felt about Melissa Archer. I'm a friend with her. I love her to death. I mean, I loved her as Natalie on Life to Live. They brought her on Days Are Alive, stuck with a plastic elephant. And I was like, what? That's the storyline? And it was just like, oh my God. I mean, I hated that storyline. And she played Serena. And we used to show that elephant all the time. But I see her. I'm like, how's the elephant?
Yeah. Or the other thing is, I don't think they gave Robin Strasser the leeway and the time to make Vivian Alamain her own.
This is well known. Robert and I aren't friends. This is very well known.
I'm sorry.
In the Twitter community. I want to say this caveat that I loved her as Dorian Lord. I loved her portrayal. Thought amazing. And I think even to this day, I think she's so royalty. I mean, definitely. But for Days Are Alive, I was like, to me, it felt like Dorian Lord Part 2. I mean, I love Louise Sorel, so I'm a big Louise Sorel fan. So for me, it was a little hard to take her as.
Yeah, I thought it was perfect. Believe me, when I heard that they couldn't get Louise Sorel, they had to find somebody else. I'm thinking, Robin Strasser sounded like it should have been gold.
Yeah, why not? Yeah,
should have been gold. I think, but unfortunately, they just brought her back, didn't give her enough time to really develop. Because the one thing we loved about Dorian Lord was they gave her time to be nuanced.
They did.
I mean, basically, Aunt Vivian there, came in guns blaring at the beginning and the end, and it's like, and never took a breath,
Yeah, he did.
And the thing, yeah, it just irritated me because I said, watching her, I said, I know she's better than this. And I didn't know if maybe it was a different schedule of working that she wasn't used to. But I mean, I'm like, it wasn't that long ago that she was on One Life to Live, still being perfect, Well,
apparently, allegedly, she was very angry afterwards and went to Twitter on that. So I don't know what happened exactly, but I'm not surprised.
She's also like up there with the other person I thought was completely wasted by Days in the last year was Judith Chapman.
Because what's so funny, I met Judith. Judith is a bomb. She's a great actress, obviously. I thought, wow, she's playing this new character with her other TV son from Young and the Restless. Great pairing. They have chemistry. And like her, she came out guns blazing too at first. I loved her portrayal as his mother and how she was kind of cold. And it's like, okay, she's working it out. She's really doing this. And you're right, it petered out.
And also, you said she was new, but okay. She came in, and I remember the character of Diana Colville back when Judy Francis played her in the 80s.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, this is nothing like it. Now, granted, people can change in 20, 30 years, yes. But we didn't really get, again, enough scope to appreciate it. And that's part of, I think, sometimes what it works a little bit wrong. I also think that they got rid of Greg Reichardt too quickly.
Too soon. They brought him back for that.
He was so funny.
They brought him back for the April Fool's episode recently. But yes, he was so good as Leo. I mean, like, open just gay as gay FS. I mean, FF. He was out there. He was just gay and wore those bright colored suits and just didn't care.
Best wardrobe when he had those weird like what are they called, like oppossuits?
Yes.
I got one of them for like Halloween. It's like, and he would wear them like for his wedding clothes. And he was funny, he was devious, but then when she slapped him across the face, he also was that perfect, little, boy again. And you realize that this is kind of like what he was so good at, because when he was introduced on Young and the Restless, his character was a total pervert that basically was bordering on child molester. I don't know. I think Lily was just barely legal age.
You give Lily herpes or something back in the day. I mean, it was like some weird thing, or syphilis or something.
And then his brother had to defend him, and then they actually did the backstory, which is kind of interesting, because I remember that Bill Bell had told me at one point during an interview when Cricket was raped on the show, who was played by his daughter. He goes, we're not going to do a general hospital. I'm not in the mindset of reforming rapists. And yet that's exactly what they did pretty much with Kevin Fisher.
Well, Kevin and Michael too. I mean, his brother.
Oh, Michael. The brother who, I mean, he's
all to get to Christine. It was like, but he's now a model citizen. So,
Yeah, he's a model citizen because he gave his kidney to Danny Brahmalati, And then I thought that was fine enough to redeem him. But then when you actually had a storyline where Cricket, who, not as she was then called Christine,
yes,
wound up getting involved with him romantically, I'm like, okay, this crosses into dangerous territory. You know,
soaps do that. They try to, and they try to put Ridge and Bridget together, and I was like, well, wouldn't he think that was his daughter? And I remember talking to Ron Moss about that years later. He's like, yeah, it was icky, and we didn't like it, and the audience totally didn't like it because he thought that was his daughter for a long time. It was a whole.
And even when he found out she wasn't his daughter, she thought he was a sister.
Yeah, exactly.
Or he thought that she was his sister, and she thought that he was her brother. And this is the same character who I know had like thrown up because her mother was sleeping with Uncle Thorne.
Yep.
So she was disgusted by the idea that her mother could sleep with her uncle, who was not biologically related to her, but she could fall in love with her own brother. And I'm like, I know that the soaps love to play with that. And I mean, I think that the best time, and I think the one time they really should have broken the rule and gone for it and seen about the real ramifications was with Heather Tom and J.D. Peck.
Oh yeah.
As Cole and Victoria. Yeah. And we found out they slept together. But then, despite the fact that he was hired because he was like, looked so much like Eric Braeden, and I think they originally wanted that, but then they realized nobody else is really a good working as a love interest for Heather Tom. So let's rewrite history again and turn him into not her brother.
Yeah, I agree.
And I thought it would have been like a really fascinating angle to explore, where you looked at the characters and said, what would happen if two people inadvertently slept with each other who turned out to be brother and sister? And Victoria had so many sexual hang-ups, it would have been even more fascinating for the character. I thought that they actually bridged an interesting thing and then just like walked away from it when Adam slept with his male lawyer to distract him so he didn't find some evidence under the bed. And then years later, we just ignore the fact that Adam ever did anything like that. And, I think that, I think it's, but the other wrestlers can be so good at like exploring things long-term that it's a shame when they ignore really interesting things that could have long-term repercussions.
I agree. It's really funny because there's a whole thing with Victoria and Neil. They didn't go with either back in the day because of interracial stuff. But there are a lot of things they
got death threats over that. It's hard to believe nowadays, but Victoria and Neil, Young and the Restless, got death threats about the idea of putting Heather Tom, who's white, together with Christophe St. John, who's African American, and they got death threats. And I'm like, really? I think that the soap audience, would have been a little bit more accepting, given everything we've seen, and we knew the characters. And I think also, if you remember, the only justification for I think the one couple that really was very good about breaking that barrier was Noah Kiefer, played by, the guy's like,
so yeah, those two
and Sidney Payne. But you know why that was acceptable to people? Because she was Latina.
Yeah.
And she wasn't, quote unquote,
white.
Totally white. So it was okay to pair her with an African American man.
Yeah.
And that was how people kind of accepted. I said, okay. But it's interesting because up till that point, the only time they really bridged the interracial relationship is if the woman was African American and the man was white.
Right. Well, remember All Our Children, they tried doing Dr. Cliff and Miss Angie together towards the end of his stint there. Didn't really go anywhere.
Well, it's funny because I will tell you, Peter Bergman is another great example of I never was that interested in Cliff Warner. I always thought he was kind of dull, but he's been, so I never thought he was a good actor, a good choice. I shouldn't say good actor, but he wasn't the good choice to play Jack Abbott, who was like this dynamic character.
Harry Lester.
And again, proved me wrong.
Yeah.
Totally. Again. And he's also been one of my favorite interviews I've ever done because he is just so into the medium. He's like one of his best cheerleaders. And he just totally, when he took over Jack Abbott, I'm like, wow, this is stuff I never saw in All My Children.
I had to explain to somebody, because they're showing the old episodes. I was like, they're like, who's that person playing Jill? I go, that's the fabulous and controversial Brenda Dixon, folks. I'm like, there was Jess Walton's so good, that's been on for so long. We love Jess. But it was like, no, Brenda Dixon was first, bitches. Like, she was the first one. And she was legendary. And again, controversial in real life on that role. I mean, she was the bomb. Loved it.
And now, I know you're an avid reader. Did you read her biography or autobiography?
I heard it's crazy talk. I heard it's in the best way. I heard it's like a good, I haven't read it, but I heard it's good.
I actually read it about 5 years ago. I actually read it back to back with Jeannie Cooper's, okay?
I read hers.
And one of the things about her, I mean, there's a lot of really interesting stories in her book, some of which I'm like skeptical about, but part of it is, it does lack a certain linearity, and she does tend to repeat herself in sections to stretch the book out. And then some of the things she says, wow, and it's
I heard it's a little crazy.
And then she also was like, just spent, I think, almost an entire chapter taking someone to task for that Welcome to My Home parody they did on YouTube.
Yes.
But she was part of that era of the 70s when you were supposed to be outlandish.
Well, yeah.
And
yes.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, I missed the time period of, I wanted my rock stars messy. I wanted my soap actresses diva-like. I mean, I wanted that because as long as I did a good job on screen or on stage, I'm good to go. But I want to hear about Beverly McKinsey. I'm drinking like Blue with an Iron Fist. I want to hear the bitchiness that goes on behind. I mean, I want to hear that. It's like that's what I expect. That's what I want. But as long as you do a good job on screen, I don't care. Give me some good stuff on screen. I love that.
Yeah, I think it also nowadays is that everybody's so conscious about their image and what's going to happen that these stories, very few of this, and now I'll tell you now, one of the things that would make us, because I've always wanted to do like another soap opera book list, but the audience is kind of like not always there for buying the soap opera books now because there's so much of this information online, who's going to pay for it. But also the publicists have such a good hold over the bad press that leaks out. And that, when's the last time you really heard of a good backstage scandal in a soap opera?
The only last one that happened, and I talked to him about it, my friend Eric Braden, my buddy Eric Braden, wrote his book out last year, and he talked about him and Peter Bergman's thing in the book, and he talked about it on my show, how they got to take off basically over some stuff, and back in the day. And that's the last time I really remember a huge, like, that was talked about. I mean, most of the stuff is not backstage. Most of it's just like, this person got exited, this person got let go. That's what's going on. But like, you don't really hear like backstage, like shenanigans. I think it's all hidden.
Well, the last thing that comes to mind for me is, and he's actually talked about recently, is Michael Mooney being let go from Young and the Restless because of those allegations.
Eric Braeden talks about that too in the book. Talks about that. Yes, he did.
Yeah, and I just read that that Michael Mooney has actually come out publicly and said that that scandal actually drove him to consider suicide.
Mm-hmm. Well,
yes, I mean,
Eric Braeden says that he was trying to get him fired. That this little kid was trying to get Eric Braeden fired, of all people, and was stepping to him. So I was like, it's very interesting, very interesting.
Well, my favorite thing was a couple years ago on that Daytime Emmy Awards. That was like you basically had to hook up your computer to a microwave oven to watch.
Horrible.
When Kathy Griffin hosted, and she actually confirmed the one thing that we all suspected about that, that Sarah Michelle Gellar said that Susan Lucci got her fired after she won the Emmy. Now, we always thought it was very suspicious, the timing, but there was Kathy Griffin on, well, I won't say national television. She was on, whoever was watching, but she was on this platform saying that Sarah Michelle Gellar told her this, that Susan Lucci did get her fired because she won the Emmy.
Well, Sarah's always said, we're not friends. Me and Susan are not friends. She had said that on stage later on. She was like, we're not friends. We work together. You could tell. I mean, you could just tell the body language at the Emmys when she won. Everything was just like, and it's funny. Here's my big defense of Susan Lucci. I love Susan Lucci, but here's my big defense.
I do too, yeah.
The fact that she was nominated over and over again, I was just kind of like, at some point, it was kind of cruel. At some point, to me, it's like, come on, folks. I mean, there were some years she probably should have been nominated. You know what I mean? And there were some years she was really good. It was like, well, just give her the goddamn Emmy. Like, just like, it was just so interesting that over and over again. So I love that she then turned into a joke with her and was like, she did commercials with sugar. I want my sugar. I want my, that kind of stuff. But it was like, I've always felt, though, in defense of her, when they called Erica Slezak all those times, who, again, admittedly, one of the greatest daytime actresses of all time, Vicky, Nikki, everybody, Tommy, whatever, I get that. But Susan did some really great work and is a recognizable name. And there were some years I thought legitimately, and you probably agree, that she could have won.
Well, I think part of the problem is that what is part of Susan Lucci's genius with the role, and that I don't think everybody quite got, was the fact that a lot of people would tune in, especially the casual viewer would tune in and think that Susan Lucci was overacting. And I'm saying, no, she's playing a woman who is overacting her own life.
Thank you.
In much of the same way that I always wondered, I asked some people, I went to see the movie Capote years ago, with the one Philip Seymour Hoffman his Oscar, okay? And I was wondering, I asked the young people there, if you had not ever seen, Capote on Mike Douglas or Merv Griffin's show, do you think he was overacting? Because Truman Capote just had this way about him that I wondered if people would look at Philip Seymour Hoffman's performance and say, oh my God, he's overacting, or no, he was acting exactly the way that Truman Capote did. And I think in the same way, Susan Lucci, I got to tell you, my favorite Susan Lucci line from All My Children Ever was, and then one of the storylines that they hated was when she had brought down Lars Bogart for being an ex-Nazi.
Yes.
And she said to her mother, well, Mother, why do you think that I, an American model, was going around South America trying to bring down a Nazi war criminal? Well, if I didn't do it, who was going to? Or when she was doing the audition to play herself in the movie, when she was reenacting the scene where she shot Ken Bogart.
Yes.
And she had the gun, and she was holding the gun, and I gotta say, so she had the gun here, okay, and she was saying, "Were you sleeping with her? Yes or no?" And she was, and that was it. People didn't understand that in many, many times, she was not an overly melodramatic actress. She was doing comedy, and once she also did like Saturday Night Live that time, you knew she was a great comic actress, and I wish she got to do more of it.
I agree. I totally agree with that. I agree with everything you just said. I think it was just like they didn't get it, and that was why she's supposed to be. She was larger. But it's funny because there's people obviously, and I put her in the same category as a J.R. Ewing, Larry Hagman, as Joan Collins, Alexis Carring. I mean, people think that they're them, or they think that they're overacting or over chewing the scenery. And it's like, that's kind of the point. Alexis was supposed to be huge and big and larger in life. And J.R. Ewing was always kind of dastardly, but also with a sense of humor and a wink. But in real life, they're not like that at all. In real life, so you're right, they get overlooked in things or dismissed because they're not considered the Meryl Streeps of their day on daytime or something.
And what must have driven Susan Lucci crazy was that at the same time she was getting like ignored for this, but doing this great comedy, Dorothy Lyman, who was also a brilliant actress, was getting people were applauding her
and winning.
Finally, somebody's bringing humor to daytime. She was winning. She won both the 1 year the supporting actress, and next year the lead actress for doing humor on the show. And I'm like, Susan Lucci has been too, and people just haven't noticed.
Or Michael E. Knight. He won 3 Emmys playing Tad the Cat. I mean, he was doing drama and comedy again on the show. I mean, again, no offense to, they're all, like I said, they're all good and deserving, but she got overlooked. I think she really did. So I said, so I always forgive her some things because I'd be pissed too a little bit that this little bitch came on for a year and got an Emmy. Like, I mean, I'd be a little salty also, maybe a little bit. But I think
that there was also some backstory to that too, that Entertainment Weekly had reported on, where Sarah Michelle Gellar was trying to upstage her in some scenes or trying to change scenes without telling. And the one thing about Susan Lucci that I've heard is that she is very meticulous, learns all of her lines, etc. And she is not a great improviser in terms of if you throw her a curveball during a scene, it's not going to play. And the fact that Sarah Michelle Gellar threw this curveball set everything in motion.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I could talk to you forever, but they won't let me do that. They'll be like, "Why are you talking for 20 hours?" I could talk. Let's come on again and talk soaps again. That's what we have to do.
I would love to do that. Thank you, James.
You have made my months that I've been coming on the show. Trust me. Like I said, folks, it's so popular Encyclopedia. It's our book of lists. I've had these for 25 years. So it says a closed mouth does not get fed. So I reached out to him. And you could have said no, you could have ignored whatever, but he did reach back to me, so I totally appreciate that. Thank you for that.
And you're quite welcome. Next time you come to Boston, bring them out. I'll sign them.
Okay, I will. I definitely will. So my question, my last little question for you, just briefly, can soaps survive? Can these 4 soaps continue to go on?
I've been thinking about that, and I've been preparing it. I fear for it because I know the damage that the O.J. Simpson preemptions did. But at least they were preempted during much of it during the summer when NBC could at least show like Days of Our Lives at night.
Yeah.
The fact that they're not here and they're also losing the summer, which is a prime recruiting ground for younger viewers.
Yes.
And also part of the thing we turn into soaps for is a certain regularity. 5 days a week, we want to see these familiar faces. If you break that habit with us, we're not necessarily going to go back. I mean, I will, because, I've been waiting for them. But it's not like your primetime series where we end in May and we wait patiently until September, October till the new season. Soaps, we want to be there every single day with us, whether we turn in or not, we know they're there. You break that rhythm, you break that habit with us, and I don't know. I think they're going to lose a lot. I think Days will come out pretty well because they've got a stockpile of episodes.
Yeah, they're fine. They're fine.
And I used to say that wasn't great for the show because they couldn't change things that weren't working. But they have the last laugh. They're going to be able to continue. I think they'll develop a audience now, because I certainly will. Wanting a soap, I'll check out Days. It's actually in a pretty good stage right now. But I'm not going to necessarily be checking out the vintage episodes of Young and the Restless for more than 5 minutes, or even when General Hospital does their vintage episodes. I'll check into it and then move on, because most of the stuff we can see all that stuff on YouTube. So I think that this is actually going to hurt them a lot.
Yeah, I think so too. But we'll find out, folks. So thank you, Gerry Waggett.
Stay tuned.
Thank you. Yes. Stay tuned. And I'm James Lott Jr. You can follow me. We're all James Lott Jr. sold at James Lott Jr. on all social media platforms. And of course, this show In Between the Pages is on every streaming service you can think of, from iHeartRadio to Spreaker to Spotify, Pandora, and the video versions on my JLJ Media page on YouTube. Wherever you find us, like, subscribe, and comment. Share this with all the soap fans who love we talked about a bunch of older soap stuff. I know about 10 people who want to hear this interview. Make sure I share it to them. So share with them also to know what's going on and see tell us what you think. Tell me, I'll pass it on to him and tell me what you think about what we were saying on the program. I'm James Lott Jr. and we'll see you next time.